That's
you know,
who I.
a lot of
I
times.
guess it's who
listen,
I am.
Well, a lot of times, listen, they say stereotypes, right, John? Don't pigeonhole one person into a stereotype or one group, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times those stereotypes are true, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of Italians like to eat. I mean, it's true, you know? Some Italians are in the mafia, if there was such a thing, which, you know, it's true, you know? I'm not going to go down any other stereotype because that wouldn't be right. I just picked my own.
Speaking of stereotypes,
Okay.
well, let's do a countdown today.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and then I want to talk about something that I watched a podcast the other night, and it really turned me. So
okay, let's do
yeah.
it. Let's do a countdown for
Let's
the
do it,
Jersey
go.
Alchemist.
Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's been so long, I forgot what my shtick was. Hey,
Yeah, yeah.
welcome back, friends.
Yes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Jersey Alchemist, coming to you from New Jersey. I'm your host, Dr. John Gerard Gallucci.
And I'm Philip D'Angelo. What's up?
I don't have the button. Where'd it go?
Hey,
There you go.
Let's go. Beautiful.
That's
Feels
it.
good to be back in the chair,
Yeah.
behind the microphone, talking about current events, good and bad.
Yeah, and we were just kind of talking about stereotypes, and you know, there's a reason for stereotypes. It's like, you know, a little bit of truth gets blown up, and then you know, people run with it because everybody likes to make a joke of someone or something that they're not, right? And that's human nature. It would be nice if someday that was no longer necessary, but you know, does it get me upset? No.
Yeah.
Am I fearful of being labeled stereotypically? I'm fearful of nothing. Okay. Now, speaking of fear, and by the way, when you're fearful of nothing, Gangula, the only way I can process that is that means that you have a belief and a faith in a power that's much bigger than what you are in your skin. And when you align yourself with that fantastic power that's bigger than you in your skin, you know, it's like Matthew 10:26 again. Have no fear of them, right? Have no fear of them, because everything that is hidden will be seen, and everything that is unknown will be revealed. That's my paraphrase of Matthew 10:26.
John, how do you get your faith to that level, though? Because a lot of people have a little bit of faith, and I don't think they're totally committed where they're fearless, like we'll be protected by God. Like, how would somebody get their faith to that level?
Okay, well, let me say this first off. There is only one thing that I have trepidation over. I refuse the word fear. I refuse to use the word fear, but trepidation, kind of another softball, you know, way of saying that you really kind of fear something. It's my own failure. It's always been my own failure, and you saw me over the last 2 weeks put myself under ridiculous truckloads of superhuman pressure because I sat for and took my pediatric surgery board certification. I'm an old dog, people. This, you know, it's not my first rodeo.
Pretty important certification. So it comes with a certain amount of pressure.
Well, you know, I'll tell you the game that's played, right? For somebody like myself that's been in this game for decades, if you fail the test, you're screwed. Then the insurance companies, if you're a private practitioner, won't pay you for your work, or if you work for a hospital system like I do, you're no longer employable. If they care for you, that they can put you, you know, on the security staff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can drive the little floor Zamboni around and wax the floor.
Yeah, that's a nice gig. Yeah.
Okay.
Earphones, music, listen to music.
Right. So it's kind of an all or nothing, do or die proposition. And you know, there's that trepidation of not passing the test. But then when you reach that Rubicon and you say, okay, I've answered enough correctly that I passed, but now damn the torpedoes, I need to crush them. I need to crush them. So I ended up with 100% on the test. Yeah. I'm happy to say that. But the trepidation, because I refuse to use the word fear. Fear can't be in my lexicon or my Rubicon. And no, I don't drive
One
a
of those
Rubicon,
cars.
right. One of those things.
The caution, is it caution a word that, you were cautious about the test?
Well, I think it was way beyond cautious, right? Way beyond, right? So I had one of my mentors who's still alive. He's well into his 90s and whatnot. And he used to take his glasses off and put them in his pocket and say, fellas, because at the time we were mostly fellas.
That was such a stereotypical move for a professor or a mentor to do that, right, with the glasses.
He'd say there's no greater motivating force in man and women than sheer terror. I saw him fire a third-year surgery resident and make that guy beg back for his internship. You got it? That's like playing Monopoly for your life and getting 2/3 of the way around the board, and then somebody gets your piece and says, back of the line, back to go, do not collect 200, you're going backwards, take it or leave it. So imagine doing medical school, getting your ass kicked for your first year, your second year, and your third year of surgery residency, where you never see your friends and family. They don't exist anymore. Forget about holidays and funerals. And then you do something to get the grand poobah to say, you're fired.
You wouldn't bring him coffee?
You're fired, and because I like you a little bit, you can interview back for square one. And that's what that guy had to do.
Wow.
Right? So that's...
Did he do something that egregious, John? Was it that horrible?
I wasn't privy to that, but he did something. He did something to get fired. But the program that I came through was known as a pyramid program. It has nothing to do with the Illuminati or the Freemasons or the pyramids of Giza. There was no eyeball at the top of it. No, a pyramid means you start 5 interns July 1st of whatever given year, and you graduate 2 chiefs. And so you know what that does to those 5 people? Now, some of those interns are only staying for a year or 2 anyway. They're preliminaries, and they're going off to ear, nose, and throat, or urology, or they say, well, I'm going to do plastics, and I only need to do, 2 years, whatever. But sometimes you get 5 interns, and they're all categorical, and they all want to graduate as a chief surgery resident.
So it's a competition.
Oh, it's horrible. Wow. It's horrible. Nobody, and not only is there team energy has been murdered. So when I was doing transplant at UPenn, there was a saying that no matter how tough it gets, with positive team energy and everybody rowing, in the same direction, we could, handle anything. And it was that rigorous. But when you pit 5 people against each other because 5 people are vying for 2 finish spots, to me that's inhumane. But the same director is the guy who fired this resident at the end of his 3rd year and made him interview back for his internship. Wow. So fear, there's no greater motivating force in man, humankind, than sheer terror. And sheer terror, falls under the blanket of fear. So I was watching, I think now my favorite podcaster, other than you, Phil.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. Thank you.
Patrick Bet David. Yeah.
What was his latest one, John?
Well, are you familiar with the 2 sweet leftist girls. Right away, I'm down the wrong road for them. The two protesting entities, and I think they were either in London, Paris, or Germany, in an art gallery. And as a protest, they opened up a can of soup. And while being filmed, threw it like an explosion right onto an original Van Gogh, Van Gogh's Sunflowers. Now, it doesn't matter that I happen to be a big Van Gogh fan, and of course the Europeans would say it's Van Gogh. Okay, well, I'm an American, so for me it was Van Gogh.
What was the worth of that painting, John? 500 million or something?
No, I don't know, but still. But the point was, these little turds were, screaming and proclaiming that something must be done about climate change. They were, I guess their fearless leader must be that little hoax thespian Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg. And then they apparently glued their hands to either that frame or the frame of another famous, iconic painting.
It's a new thing. They're gluing themselves to a piece.
So here's how Pat Bet David's podcast turned me. Because people are just gobsmacked over how two 20-year-old co-eds can do something so heinous as to damage or destroy an original Van Gogh because of climate change. Okay? Now, we're not going to argue the merits of the science is settled. Bullshit. We're not going to argue that today. We're not even going to talk about that. We're going to talk about their actions and what they did.
John, put them in jail for 5 years. We'll see if they're throwing soup around.
Well, my first thought was these two idiots deserve a good old-fashioned Middle Eastern religious punishing.
Oh boy!
Right, and I
didn't say
it was religion, or I didn't say what kind of punishment. All I know is that what they did infuriated me. Did it call attention to climate change? Absolutely not. All I wanted to do was reach out and touch someone, right? So I'm, well aware of that. It happened, 2 weeks ago or something like that? And I'm flipping through videos. I got my channel changer, and, and I love Bet David. And, I learn something more about him every single day that I watch him.
What'd you learn?
Well, the guy he's Armenian and Assyrian. He's 6'5".
Is he that tall?
That's what gobsmacked me, because he kept talking about how he was military, he was special forces, he was just about to re-enlist for another 6 years to go through some, training.
Because they were going to pay off his debts or his loans.
You're going to pay off his debt, right? That's exactly. And and then when he said, he looks like a Middle Eastern bodyguard, he does. But I'm thinking, is he 5'10", 5'11"? He's 6'5". I mean, that's crazy. He's, I believe, a martial artist. He's a military guy. He was all set up with the special forces. And a friend said to him the night before he was going in to his, I guess, commanding officer to re-enlist for another 6 years, I said, no, you're not. This has nothing to do with the military.
John, where was my phone call from you the night before I got married? All right, where was my phone call from you saying don't do it?
Well, I'll give you a spiritual New Age response to that.
No, it's all right.
You had to go through this.
Yeah, you're right. To become the person you want to become. Okay. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, it's okay. So he just amazes me. But who did he have on his podcast? He had those two 20-year-old gals.
Oh, I didn't see
that to me should be in jail for what they did. But he had them on their podcast. Now they were remote. They were, I think, in London. They both, I think, had British accents. And off camera, he had a British woman from London who may have been in his studio. And then he had somebody else who didn't get much airtime. But this was like a 20, 25-minute podcast clip from a much larger long-form interview. Maybe the long-form interview was an hour and a half. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Here's what turned me. I really wasn't completely sure of why a leftist does what they do and why they say what they say and why they, and how they roll. What fuels them to, as opposed to what Whoopi Goldberg admits, because apparently she doesn't have any mirrors in her house or at the studio.
If you look like that, would you?
Well, she can't see herself. And she made a proclamation I'm not a Ted Cruz fan, but I got to tell you what, he turned me too, because he had the balls to all by himself go on The View. Did you see that?
He's got guts.
Well, it takes guts, because, that's like getting, tied to a stake in a big black cauldron as the hostiles are lighting the fire, and they all got spears pointed at you, and they're going to eat you.
Yeah.
And
you'll eat them up.
and there were a couple of people on that panel that were polite. And then there was, I think her name was Anna. I'm not even going to grace her with for me to say her last name. And Anna and Whoopi were just downright ugly, nasty.
They started
ugly, nasty leftists. And all of us that are paying a little bit of attention, you should be saying, what causes a human being to go to the dark side where they're willing to turn over police cars and then throw Molotov cocktails and burn them, to burn a city down, to smash private property, to kill people,
to hurt people,
to hurt and kill people? What is it that's inside them that gets them to act this violent and this aggressive and this radically, right? Because let's face it, by and large, you don't see violent crowds of right-wingers tearing apart a city. If that's true,
January 6th.
Yeah.
January 6th.
Well, that's another crock of shit. Okay,
Amen.
right.
Amen.
Here's what turned me. These girls were giving their dissertation. One was a little bit more poised than the other, but the one that was a little less poised, she went on a rant, and she gave a treatise. She went on a diatribe, and I couldn't believe it, because she outwitted herself right on PBD podcast. And she said, "Don't you understand?" She goes, "I fear the future. I fear not being able to graduate school. I fear not living to be 25. I fear not being able to marry the one I love." And then she threw in that she's queer. Okay, those were her words. I think that's a British way of saying.
Yeah, they speak a little different.
Okay, and I fear this, I fear that, with all of the emotion and energy that a human being could muster. She fears so badly that I was absolutely stunned. And I said, this is the answer. She doesn't understand what she did. She just outed every single leftist that goes beyond what's banging around in their heads. She outwitted the leftists that act out, that react, that get violent and hurtful and dangerous, and they rob and pillage and maim and murder, or they open up a can of soup and they throw it onto a Van Gogh, an original Van Gogh in an art gallery. And it's all because of fear. Well, what do they fear? They fear everything that the New World Order and the mainstream media is New World Order, their scholastic experience, so high school and the universities, and now we know, more recently it's K through 3, K through 3, grammar school, high school, pick a university, it's all geared to create in the hearts and minds of young, impressionable human beings. These could be your brother, not my brother, your sister. My brother and sister are both gone and they're both too old. They could be your daughters, your sons, right? I would say, against all odds, and that's true for me and everything in my life, is against all odds. I think you have to have an awareness. Study keenly the leftist who likes to get disruptive, hurtful, violent, or murderous, and understand that they're acting out of fear. And what is the progenitor of fear? Lucifer, Satan. It's evil. And if you think that doesn't exist, you are stupid.
John,
you are stupid.
You know when a dog bites, it bites out of fear.
Yeah.
So when a dog attacks, it's because it's scared that you're going to impose your will, you're bigger, you're coming down into their property.
Yeah.
It's trying to defend itself. So
no,
that
you're,
makes 100%
you're absolutely
correct.
right. You know, and that is true. That's a really great point.
Lucifer.
That means the rabbit in Monty Python and the Holy
Where
Grail.
where behind the rabbit?
Right.
No.
Look!
It is the rabbit. The killer rabbit. Remember that?
Killer rabbit!
And it went for everybody's throat.
Right, and bit their heads off. Because he was fearful that they were going to enter the cave.
Yeah, that was the.
Right.
I think that was the funniest part. No, it is the rabbit.
It is the rabbit.
Or we can go to Inspector Clouseau and the Pink Panther.
Right.
Does your dog
Does your dog
bite?
bite?
No. It bites me. That is not my dog. How great was that? So that dog bit out of fear as well. That's what really motivates these leftists. Now they're talking about they want to live to do all those things you said.
Yeah.
And they're worried about climate change. Well, all of Europe and even England, they're running out of oil. Oil prices through the roof. And people are lining up wood and trying to get charcoal.
Yeah.
So she's going to have a big thing about climate change when it's sub-zero and she's outside shaking somewhere. Tell her the planet's not going to heat up. Did you know that
keep going.
They were saying, John, that we have the United States of America has 25 days left of diesel fuel. A supply for only 25 more days.
How is that going to work with the trucking
listen,
scene?
Now, talk about bringing the country to a stop.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now, I wasn't being rude by, let me play on my cell phone while we're filming.
Fact-finding.
I want everybody to look up PBD. PBD is Patrick Bet David podcast. And the title of this particular video that I really, really urge you to watch, and it's 21 minutes, right? The title of it is, I Just Want to Live Until I'm 25. Watch PBD podcast, Bet David. I just want to live until I'm 25. Can you imagine what's in that person's heart and mind? If you don't have empathy for that person, can of soup on a Van Gogh or not? You know,
I'd make sure she survived 25 after 4 more years in prison, and then when she came out. One thing I'm going to complain about your boy Patrick over there.
Mm-hmm.
He did pit. I feel he did pit 2 Italians against each other. Sammy the Bull Gravano and Michael Franzese.
That's great
showmanship. And it was a pay-per-view event.
Oh, it was?
You had to pay.
Well, there's your answer.
I was like,
pay-per-view.
Yeah, but no. I was like, to me, he lost, and I'm a big Patrick Bet David fan. He lost a little bit of credibility there.
Well,
I love him because he's a huge Kobe Bryant fan and Kobe Bryant philosophies, as am I.
Yeah.
So I like and the fact that he came from nothing to make this multi-million-dollar insurance company is pretty amazing.
Is that what he has, an insurance company?
Insurance company, yeah. And he actually bought one of the videos, his newer ones, because I listen to him as I'm exercising in the morning. He was saying how his complex, he's going to make it so his workers, he bought a big property.
He's in Florida, isn't he?
He's in Florida, yes. He moved out of California.
Yeah, well, smart. He had his eyes open.
He might have went to Texas, John.
Oh, then you know what he's got? He's
I one of the
his
two.
Residence is on the water in Florida. Well, look, a guy like that, he's probably got a bunch of residences.
Got a bunch of residents, but he's going to build a complex, totally worker employee friendly, gyms, theaters.
Right.
He bought like acres and acres, and he said it's going to be years to develop, but that's what his goal is. He made a great point in his one of his newer videos about life in general. About
was it him giving a talk on a stage?
No.
Okay.
No. It was him talking. Actually, he was talking to Michael Francis alone. So I because the guy he's talking to in Italian, I have to watch him. But he was just saying how life is. People say they're bored. Right. Well, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
You're not challenging yourself.
Right.
You're staying status quo just like this for years. So of course you're going to be bored. So what do you have to do? You have to challenge yourself and try and attain goals that maybe you won't reach.
Right.
But just the fact that you're going to try and attain them, that energy is going to kick in. Yeah. You can't stand still. You can't nap on the couch every day at 3 o'clock. So what do you have to do? So you have to produce energy, and all of a sudden life isn't boring. It's challenging. Challenge yourself. People.
Yeah, later this morning, I watched him. He must have been one speaker of many in kind of it was one of those weekend motivational,
Does he come to Jersey at all, John? Because if you ever want to go see him, if he's around with a group, I would go too.
We'll have to look.
Have you ever gone to one of those?
No.
Like, who's that big tall guy that does the motivation? What's his name?
Anthony Robbins?
Yeah, that guy. Like, I never went
He's
to...
He's a little lurch-like.
I'm not a big fan of his. Yeah. Well, he's like 9 feet tall. But, but he has all those, like, speakers and weekends and stuff like that.
Interesting, because PBD made reference that when he was a very young man in his 20s, he was inspired because he was sitting, I think, first row at an Anthony Robbins event, and he was watching him, and he says, how does this guy do it? And then he revealed that his GPA in school was less than a 2.
That was unbelievable.
Right, less than a 2. And, and he was kind of lost, didn't have any aim or focus or ability to pull it together. But then he was just touched with drive and ambition. And once he got enough of inspiration from other people, then he realized that, you didn't have to kill yourself over short-term goals. And so he's one of the best motivational speakers I've ever seen in my life. Now, everybody kisses Joe Rogan's ring because he's the godfather, really, of...
Wasn't he just on Rogan?
It probably was.
I'm not sure.
But PBD is a completely different kettle of fish than Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's smoking dope, smoking cigars, drinking his 4th scotch, and he's got Joey Diaz, F-bombing every other word. No, I understand that, right? So he's kind of look, Joe Rogan is a real icon, and he is stupendous. There's a lot of people that don't like him because they're disappointed that he isn't ostensibly and blatantly a leftist, and that's why they don't like him. But PBD, this guy could be the president of a university. This guy should own Twitter. I mean,
that's going down, John.
Yeah, I know.
Musk is in.
Apparently he fired 4 of the top douchebags.
Had him escorted.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what.
Have you ever been escorted out of a building, John?
The last person that tried to escort me. No, I never got escorted out of anywhere. Right. But so back to these 2 gals, these 2 20-year-olds, right? I have to tell you what.
You're not getting soft.
I would be accused of being a bleeding heart, and usually the next word is liberal. I'm I'm a mix of both. Anybody who writes a book called My Life with God, and
Fantastic read.
and puts socioeconomically disadvantaged kids from minority circumstances through college with his own money, and that money wasn't given to me. I broke my balls for that
It was
money.
earned.
So, you know, I'm a mix. You can't call me. I'm definitely not a right wing crazy guy.
You're a free thinker, John.
Oh boy, man, you just nailed it. I'm a free thinker.
And isn't Joe Rogan and PBD, aren't they?
They are absolutely free thinkers.
So there's the common bond.
And what leftists don't like,
Free thinking.
there's no leftists watching us. They don't like people to be free thinkers. They don't like people like me or you because they would call us rogues.
You must
Why?
conform.
They would fear us. So now, who's more likely to be fearful? Somebody who thinks artistically, softly, non-analytically. I think whenever I forget if it's left brain, right brain, my brother was always analytic, but he couldn't. I think if you're a right brain thinker, you're more spiritual, you're more artsy, you're emotional, you're more likely to be an empath. I'm artsy, I'm profoundly spiritual, and I am an empathic healer. But I'm somewhere in the center. A lot of people don't believe that. And I think it's because we've had this whole leftist, ugly, nasty, tyrannical, totalitarian, I will not hear your point of view on social media that really turned me off. So for the last,
college campuses.
For the last 6 years, I would be much more likely to listen to Ben Shapiro talk with Joe Rogan than I would watching Sam Harris vomit his leftist, atheist shit all over a stage. And I'm happy to say that the last time I saw that douchebag being interviewed, he got run over by a steamroller. Run over. He was like, they just stopped him cold. And you know something? To me, that's equivalent of watching the Georgia Guidestones get blown up, because it's a sign of the changing times. And we are caught in spiritual warfare, and we are being inundated with a Luciferian anti-God agenda. And yes, it's true, it's happening right in front of us. And I'll be as bold to say that that idiot, Prince/King Charles, is absolutely a Luciferian. Absolutely. And when my kids were in London, and when they took a tour of wherever the hell they were, Windsor Castle, or right, the tour guide showed them a big blackbird, and he says there are 6 blackbirds on the property, and the lure is, as long as the 6 blackbirds are well cared for, the monarchy will stand. 6 blackbirds are a representation of Satan. I didn't need that guy to tell that story for me to know.
Interesting.
I know. So, who was one of King Charles's best friend? Jimmy Savile, the pedophile that used to procure kids for celebrities and politicians. Yeah. And he had a children's TV show.
Oh, special.
Bring
Well,
them
how
all
else are you
in.
going to get kids, John?
Oh, yes.
Come on.
People, open your eyes and your ears. Have the eyes to see and the ears to
I love
hear.
that. Yeah.
And don't be fearful, because when you allow fear to invade you, you're saying to the Satanists, here, please come in and destroy my energy, destroy my life, and take your hedge clippers and cut the silver cord between me and the loving, magnanimous, living God, the Creator. Cut that cord, because that's what Satan and Lucifer are all about. Don't let them do that. These 2 poor, wretched 20-year-olds that threw soup on Van Gogh's painting are so filled with fear, and then the fear begets hate, and the hate begets violence. You know, if anybody is tagged with, you know, quoting and pointing fingers about you have an aggression toward me, and that's a major aggression, and then there's an aggression, and then there's a microaggression. Well, what the fuck is opening up a large can of soup and dousing a Van Gogh in an art gallery? Dear ones, is that not a disgusting, horrible hatred, aggression? That's exactly what it is. So, ladies, yes, that's what you are. Ladies, get a grip on yourself. Stop listening to the New World Order, egotistical, fear-driven, Luciferian media. Stop listening to the media, because the media has created the monsters that you presently are. And so has the university, college, scholastic system. So step out, ladies. Let the living waters come back into your void. And when you do that, people, then you have the ability to become free thinkers. And when you become free thinkers, the fog lifts, the living waters come back.
Let the sun shine.
And let the sun shine in, and then you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And I think we're done, Phil.
I was like almost an alchemization without alchemizing.
Yeah, I just kind of went right into it.
Would you want to add to that, or?
The only thing I want to say is, like and subscribe and share.
Oh, please.
Likes, you know.
Tell your friends.
Likes, share, subscribe, and go to PBD Podcast. Patrick Bet, B-E-T David, I think it's hyphenated. Like I said, he's Syrian and Armenian by genetics. He says, I'm born in Tehran, made in America. I mean, this guy is
Good guy.
Inspirational. He's a good guy. He's not out to hurt anybody. He's not out to spread misinformation like the communazi big tech world wants you to think that there is out there. No. And ladies, one way or another, I hope that you won't, but maybe you'll watch this podcast, and for God's sake, in your own words, I fear this, and I fear that, and I'm fearful of this, and I'm so fearful of that, and I'm terrified of this. Listen to yourself. You've outed yourself. You've psychoanalyzed yourself. You didn't need Jordan Peterson to do it for you. God bless, ladies. Come back. Come back into the fold. Stop destroying iconic world art. That's not the way to get your point across. There's a much better way. God bless, Phil.
God bless you. Thank you, John, for that episode. If you like what we're doing, subscribe, like, follow, share, everything.
That's right.
Jersey Alchemist.
There you go.
Peace. Pow.